Hello and welcome to The Power of Our Story. This is a group where we are building a tribe of like-minded individuals. We speak often about topics that are relative to trauma, recovery, growth, resilience, leadership, and a variety of other topics. The people that are here are all here that come from the backgrounds that I just mentioned. We have a huge number of people involved in public service or service of some sort with police and fire dispatchers, with police officers, firefighters, people involved in public service, clinicians, counselors, people that have experienced life. And when you experience life, often trauma is a part of that life. What we're going to be doing today is we're going to be talking about values, mission, personal mission, and goals. And we're going to outline some of that and define it. So we're going to do a fun activity. If you're watching after the fact, you can join in. What you're going to need is really easy. It's a piece of paper and a pen or a pencil. Ideally, this would be a journal. And if you haven't watched the episodes with Janet or Holly or Greg Henke or some of the others, watch those because they talk often about the importance of journaling. What I mentioned before we started is that actually writing something down helps us to retain the information more readily than sometimes using a digital format where we can easily discard it. We're not necessarily going to spend a lot of time on introductions here because for that, I want you to review some of the other videos posted by Sarah on this channel because everybody who's here has a very notable and important presence in this format, and they're all people within their own realm that are helping a lot of people to recover. If I didn't say it, my name is Patrick McCurdy, and I am from First Responder Wellness, where I'm a public safety advocate. And this is a part of our leadership and resilience training that we often do with my own twist on it. So I'm going to share with you a screen, and I'm going to talk about rules of engagement for today. This is meant to be an open discussion. However, the open discussion on a digital format doesn't always work as well as it's intended to. So if we talk over each other accidentally, put your hand up on the thing and I'll be able to call on you. But I'd like it to be kind of an open flow. And I'm going to try and share a whiteboard with you and see if you guys see that. Do you see? Okay, it says we can communicate with comments and explore new tools. Can you see the whiteboard that I'm sharing? Awesome. Okay. This is going to be the format that we're going to use to log our thoughts. And if I do this in person, I use a real whiteboard where we can scribble on it. And sometimes I do the old the sticky pad thing where you brainstorm and you put them all over. You can see a bunch of names moving around like a game. You see Jim Lydon and Michelle Franklin and Terry Peters. Janet's on there. We see everybody moving their names around. So that's part of it, is you're going to be able to comment here in different spaces. And rules of engagement are very loose. If you want to, you can change the color for impact on one of the squares, or you can enlarge it. You can fiddle with it a little bit. But what we're going to do is we're going to start making a general list, and there are only 30 squares on each side. So if you want to, you can copy a square and paste it, add some of your own. But we're going to get some values listed. And on both sides, we have the power of our story as a group, as we attempt to define what the values are of this group, and then your individual values. Now, values are used, that word, in normally a positive context, and I'll give you some examples of that. But values can also be negative. And we've all known people, for example, where maybe their primary value is power. And you can see how power might be a corrupting belief system or value that a person might have. But it could be very positive too. If a person says, I want to achieve as much political power as I can so I can make positive changes, you can see where the pitfalls might be, but you can see where their attitude or intention is good. Another corrupting power would be greed. But I would say that, or excuse me, a corrupting value would be greed. I would say that most people who have that as a core value don't list it as a core value. They list something like ambition, achievement as their driving principle or power, and greed sometimes is the driving motivating factor. But what I define values as, and if you look it up, you're going to find a lot of different definitions, and you're going to find definitions for principles too. But I define values as the core principles that drive us. So we often use the term, I've drawn a line in the sand. And I've heard that a lot in the last couple of years. To me, the line in the sand means it's a shifting thought process, because if the wind comes or the tide changes, that line can be washed away or blown away. So to me, a line in the sand is something where I say, at this point, this is where I stand, but I'm open to suggestion and I might change my mind. And for this here, we're talking about hard red lines. A hard red line is a line that you don't cross. And over the last couple of years, I think that all of us have been pushed in some context to redefine or to define for the first time what our red lines are. I also feel if you haven't previously done this, that it creates difficulty when people are saying either you're with me or you're wrong, which seems to be the context. Take your pick on which topic. It could be politics, it could be political ideals, it could be religious philosophies, belief systems. Everybody's drawing these really hard lines that really aren't that hard. They're more lines in the sand that shift and sift as we encounter them. Some people who didn't have clear red lines entering some of these circumstances had to make hard choices. And without these as a part of your core being, it's hard to make difficult choices sometimes. Then, once we've defined our values, which is our intent for today, defining our personal values and our group values, that will lead us to help develop a personal mission statement. And from that, later in the process, which I think will be a different session, we'll be defining our goals that will help us to achieve that mission statement that incorporates our values. So hopefully I didn't say too much. So I'm going to give you an example. When you look up lists of values, there are dozens and dozens of those available on the internet. One thing I think is interesting is that a lot of these lists where you have literally hundreds of entries on different values that people may have, some of my core values aren't listed there. Early in my life, I was thinking about my dad, who was a very good man, an honorable man. He was in law enforcement as well. And I thought, why is it that my dad was so good, was such a good leader, so highly respected? Why did his people hold him in such high regard? And I wanted to emulate that. So I came up with, my dad's always honest, always tells the truth, and always does the right thing. And so my core values became, that became my statement. And here's one way to redefine it is, when you die, how do you want people to talk about you afterwards? What words do you want them to use to describe you and your character? For me, the words that I came up with were, I will always tell the truth, regardless of circumstance. And that's a tough one, which I may have to modify occasionally, because if my wife says, how does this dress look? I may have to be cautious about how truthful I am. But I will always tell the truth, and I'll always be known for trying to do the right thing. And to have both of those as my two strongly held values, courage is a huge component of that. But you never see courage listed on any of these sheets. You also don't see the word discipline listed as a value. And yet I think it's a core value that drives a lot of this here in this group, and a lot of you that are watching this after the fact. So I'm going to open this up, and I'm going to, just because of that, you can pick any square you want. You're going to see my name appear on it, and I'm going to put down courage as one of my core values, and that's how it's going to work for us. Now, if you want to, if you decide that this is absolutely a driving principle that everybody should have, you could do this too, and you could move it out of pocket, because I don't like the super neat structured format that I created here. I like it a little bit messy because it shows individualism and individuality and different attitude. So I'm going to leave it open. And what I'd like you to do is, as you add a value, just say out loud what that value is. And in a moment, we're going to discuss why these values are important to you. Who'd like to go first? Janet, I see you moving around on the whiteboard. Would you like to go first? And
yeah, I was just trying to move it around. I don't know why it's stuck there, but
another rule of engagement is if we, some are already popping up. Awesome. Integrity is listed.
Yeah,
I can already see I'm going to have to enlarge it so I can read them. There's a value. I need to wear glasses maybe.
do you want me to wait?
No, I want you to, but if you're listing them, I want people to say what value they're listing.
I listed compassion. I think that in order to serve, we need to have compassion in all areas of our life.
Great. Okay. And who put down integrity?
Integrity. That would be me.
Okay. Why did you list that one?
Because that is basically, that is my line in the sand, for lack of a better term. And for me, that line doesn't move, so it's more of a hard line. And I've shared with people before, right? That's when I was challenged on my integrity, I made my decisions based on, nope, I'm not going to blow with the wind here.
Awesome. Thank you. Now, I see some being repeated, and I don't have a problem with that. The intent with this, just so you know, is to give us a list to draw from later. So you may not have one listed here, or you may come up with some after the fact, or you may change them as we do this process, and that's all okay. This is just to get the wheels spinning. Michael, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, I tried to write integrity in there, but it didn't show up too. But I was going to say, yeah, integrity is a driving one. I would say like Jim, line in the sand. Like, I think it drives all the other core values. Because integrity, if you know where you stand, integrity is like who you are. And if something's against what you stand for, then you'd be breaking your integrity to do that, if that makes sense.
It totally does.
So
Now,
I would say that's definitely a huge one.
It totally does. Now, one thing I didn't mention is that as we do this, what I should have said in the beginning is if you take that piece of paper and either with a notebook, you use two halves of the notebook, left and right, or if you fold the paper in half or draw a line down the middle, this drill is going to be you listing a lot of values. And from those values, we're going to help you to narrow it down. Also, as you're listing them, you can list a group value for power of our story, or if you want to, you could hold off on that till the second part, but both are open and fair game. So who put down being real?
That would be me.
Go ahead.
Hi guys. Yeah, I was trying to spell authenticity, but I was sucking at it. So yeah, and I can't do that. I'm a big speller. Yeah, I just think being authentic, it just matters. People are drawn to that and they can tell. And for me, that's a core value. Yeah, I mean, along with integrity, but I think just, being in a real space is, it's special. So.
I agree. I like that. And Sarah, I'm sorry, I didn't call on you because you had your hand up. Go ahead.
Oh, no problem. I did duplicate courage. I think the thing, it's interesting how as we are in new seasons and different seasons of our lives, there's certain individual core values that can surface more strongly. I feel like this is a time that it takes courage to really protect other people. I think that's the first thing that came up. To not be influenced by what other people think, but have the courage to really step forward to protect, to support others in the others focused arena. So that's what came, if that makes sense, that's what came up for me first when you presented this.
It absolutely makes sense. And if history repeats itself, which it usually does, more courage is going to be required in the years that are ahead of us than the years that are behind us. So I agree. Michelle, I saw your name floating around. What did you put on there? Or what is one of the words you're thinking about adding?
I actually put curiosity on there. For me, it's a huge driving factor of always remaining curious, always wanting to learn more, always wanting to, whether it's textbook style learning, whether it's learning about myself or learning about, society and people and how they interact. I teach my children that the moment that you become complacent and think that you've learned everything is the moment you've died, whether it's physically or mentally. So for me, a huge driving factor to keep myself growing is curiosity.
I think that's awesome. Something that people often don't consider when we do this drill are words like humor, That's a very important piece for a lot of people. It's a good coping mechanism in times of stress. Some people put fitness as a core value, other things. But our goal here today, even if there are things that maybe aren't at the top of your list, is to try to fill up these two boards as much as we can. Because again, this is going to be a guideline for the second part. I don't think I called on Janet. When I did, she wasn't ready yet. Janet, have you added any words that you'd like to tell us about?
I did. I was the first one, compassion.
Oh, you did. I'm sorry. Okay. So
Great
I said-
impression, right?
yeah, no, you did say that. I was just, everybody said something impactful. Loyalty is a good one. Who just put that on there?
I typed it in for Mike. He said that his stuff isn't showing up.
Oh, okay, cool. Mike, you want to talk about that?
Yeah. Loyalty, loyalty, you know, is like a huge one for me. Like you're talking about mission statement, like I have 5 in my mission statement: loyalty, honor, courtesy, nobility, and valor. And loyalty is, you know, being true to those around you, you know, and I think it kind of goes hand in hand with integrity. You're not talking about people behind their back, you know, you're there to support those people that you care about, or for me, you know, just people in need. Like I'm loyal to what I stand for, and I'm not gonna go against that.
Can loyalty sometimes be a value that misguides us too? Have you ever found yourself in a position where you're loyal to someone who does you wrong and perhaps takes advantage of your loyalty?
You know, that's a good question, and yes, but that's where you have to know, you know, that red line, that line in the sand. Like, okay, yes, I have a loyalty to you, but you're asking me to breach my values, and I'm not gonna do that. You know, it like comes down to, and sadly, a lot of the times the situations that I've had that is family, and I hold family in high regards. Sometimes you just got to love them and support them from a distance. But then again, family's not always blood. So
yeah, I would say that you being a Marine, sometimes too, and you could help me with the statement. What is it? It's core, family, country. Is that the order?
honor, courage, commitment.
No, I was talking about the order of loyalties for the Marine Corps. I think it's core, family, country, right? And so sometimes too, you put your loyalty in an organization or a group where their values change and don't reflect what you originally signed up for, so to speak, right? Good.
Yeah.
Catherine, I haven't called on you. And Terry, I'm going to call on you first before I call on Catherine because I see your hand up. Go ahead.
So I shared in the chat, it's a via character strength assessment. It's something that I actually share with my coaching clients. All you have to do is actually share your email address with them. It lists your top 5, and it will actually go through a total of 24 character strength, assessments if you wanted to take it. So, and I really appreciate you doing this exercise with us. It's a nice reminder.
I have not done that yet, and I just clicked on the link. I really appreciate it. I do think it's a good reminder. I think the value in this particular drill is the discussion that we have, because it's not uncommon when I do this on a real whiteboard for somebody who puts something down to walk up there and erase it or cross it out because they've changed their mind. And the discussion is an important point. Thank you. Thank you. Did you have more on that, Terry? Okay. I haven't called on Catherine and I haven't called on Lisa, so I'd like to put you guys in the hot seat. Who wants to go first?
I can go first.
Okay.
I'm also multitasking, so I apologize if I'm repeating anything anyone else said. But for me, I and I haven't put anything on the board either, but for me, I would say personal responsibility is a really big one, and just sort of holding yourself to a certain standard, as well as, you know, following through on things that you say you want to do or are going to do, and just following through on that. Like if you give your word, you follow through, if that makes sense.
It absolutely does. What was the word that you used to describe that?
Personal responsibility.
Personal responsibility. Okay, cool. Thank you. Lisa, in the hot seat.
Had to go put my other eyes on. How's everyone this morning? Long time.
Very-
So I'm just kind of watching what you guys are doing. I put in the green square. I didn't put anything in the red, but I put respect in the green square. I don't know if I have to click like that little blue select on the toolbar to get my name to show up.
Huh. I don't know. I don't have that.
Anyway, so I just put respect because I think it's so important for us to respect each other. It just enhances the relationship. And I'm kind of stuck at what I want to say. So I'll just leave it at that for now.
No problem. I think respect is another word that is subject to definition, because I would challenge that we often have people in a position of power who say things like, I demand respect, or you will respect me. And that is totally different than what you're talking about, correct?
Yes, yes.
And we could take
Absolutely.
a lot of these words, like somebody said, grounded. And grounded, boy, that has a whole variance of definition. Some people who say, I'm very grounded, you look at them and you say, they're so disheveled. I couldn't call that grounded, right? So a lot of these words, most of these words are subject to individual interpretation. And that's where this discussion becomes important. As we look at the, and I see people adding some, so I like that, but they're blank. So what is it that you're adding on the left there is one of the questions. As we look at the pink side or reddish side of the board with the power of our story, there's some important words there too. Some of them are repeated, some are self-explanatory. But on that, we're talking about a group of people who gather together. So Sarah, I'm going to pick on you for a second. Why would the words that we put in the group context be different from the words that we put in the individual context?
I think you're more, excuse me, you're more vulnerable in the group. So there might be different traits that you want to have in the group. Like maybe you're feeling more like you want to know that you're surrounded by people that are trustworthy or that are safe. Maybe even more than their personal integrity in certain areas, like in work ethic, or you know, there's just more of a vulnerability in the group. And so maybe, you know, what is wanted is different with the group.
As you were saying it, I added some of the words because you used a lot of powerful words. Vulnerable wasn't on there yet. You said safe, that wasn't on there yet. I put down authentic because I thought it was interesting that it was mentioned, but didn't appear on this side of the board. But we do have be real on the left that Denise talked about. So what words have not been addressed? Who'd like to speak up about a word?
I will.
Persistent.
Okay, Janet, go ahead first. And then I didn't hear who else that was, but go ahead, Janet. And I see your hand, Jim.
Yeah, I put trusting myself, and why I put that is trusting myself that this was a safe place to speak, to share. So I think
Yeah.
that's value, trusting ourselves to know that we're in a safe place.
And I think I would add as an underlying value there, courage, right? It takes courage to do a lot of these things, to be authentic or vulnerable, transparent. I like how the individuality is coming out, how the loving is circled. That's pretty cool. Jim, what did you want to say?
So I was just going to address kind of the group values versus the individual values, in the sense of, for someone to have trust in a group, it's dependent on an alignment of values, and that there needs to be, and it's never probably going to be like 100%, but a certain portion of your core needs to be in alignment with a group that you're joining, in order for there to be trust that's built that allows an outcome or a performance or that type of thing. And so that I just, when we're talking about individual values versus the group, I think for people to join a group, and this goes back to even if we're hiring people for employment into an employment type of scenario, being able to dig down and assess their values to make sure there's some level of alignment is likely going to lead to a better outcome of the work relationship, or that type of thing. So that I just wanted to kind of highlight the importance of alignment of values when you're going outside of yourself and into a group, whether that's a work environment, a tribe like this, whatever. There's got to be some level of alignment in order for the trust to occur to engage.
I agree. I think, though, once you align your values, then it becomes okay to have some different values and opinions that you could discuss once you align them. I agree.
And my point being is you never have alignment, right? 100%, right? And I've done this exercise in other programs, right, where I demonstrate, hey, here's the 3 organizations that I worked for, and here's what my personal values are. And you'll see that there's not 100% alignment in any one of those 3, but there is an element of crossover that allows me to sort of fit into that structure or that organization.
I think that's a huge point. And when you find that your values are askew or no longer in alignment with the group that you're working with or for, maybe it's time to consider leaving. And you mentioned it. I think a lot of us have encountered that, especially over the last several years. Thank you. Michael, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd say on both sides, both list honor. I don't see it on there. But for some reason, the whiteboard's being weird on my computer. But I would say honor on individual and for the power of our story. Kind of like what Jim was saying, the alignment, we have that because we all have different values, but at the core, I think we have a lot of the same values, especially coming from the military background and first responder background. A lot of the core values you see that are instilled in us from those organizations are very similar. So at the root, we have a lot of the same values. But I would say there's a sense of unity would be one for the power of our story. We're all united by that similar background, that trust, and I put confidentiality, like the sense of confidentiality, like we can talk about that stuff, which goes hand in hand with vulnerability. But you have to feel like there's some kind of sense of, hey, I can talk about this with you guys. Which now that I'm saying it out loud, I realize that's kind of trust too. That you can talk, you can open up and talk to the people in this group and they're not going to judge you. They're going to support you, and they're not going to go and be like, oh my God, you'll never believe what Michael said. Right. What was the other one? I had another one, but I just brain farted. Respect. That was another one for both sides. that sense of respect within the group. Like we joke with each other about our different branches, or firefighters, police officers, that friendly banter, but at the end of the day, there's that respect amongst each other.
Yeah, definitely. And respect, we've talked about in other programs, how difficult that is to define. It's one of those things where you know it when you see it, right? Or you know it when you experience it, but sometimes it's a constantly evolving definition, especially with individuals. And while we were talking, I played a dirty trick because I added some blank squares on both sides that I'd like you guys to continue to fill up. Now, as we look at it, and Catherine, I see your hand. One of the things I see, for example, on the individual values is strong boundaries. And I think to do that, it requires some of the other concepts that are listed as underlying things like perhaps courage or being a critical thinker, et cetera. And so I think it's interesting how much overlap there is in this. Catherine, go ahead.
I was just going to add another one, maybe under individual, but strong conviction, having really strong standing in what it is you believe, knowing what it is. Patrick, to your point, when you opened, doing what's right, you have to, strongly feel what's right in order to stick to that. So yeah, I would say strong conviction.
Cool. Okay. Is there anybody that has a comment on something that they put down that you'd like to share and you didn't get a chance to do that yet?
I wanted to share about persistence.
Yeah, go ahead, Michelle.
I think this is, personally, I feel like this is stronger on the group one than the individual one for me. But I do feel like with the passion and the conviction that we have behind the power of our story, I think persistence is a very important value to have, because we're going to hit roadblocks, we're going to hit shut doors, it's not always going to be just an easy yellow brick road in front of us. So I think when you're trying to put a company or a nonprofit or something like this out there where you have to have people be vulnerable in order to make it work, I think you have to have persistence be at the top for you.
I think that's important. Or tenacity might be interchangeable. I don't know if, oh, it is on there. Good. Okay. It is on there. Catherine, go ahead. Thank you, Michelle, by the way.
Sorry, I just forgot to lower my hand.
Oh, no problem. I'm going to put you on the spot. Give me another word. Oh, she laughs like I'm joking.
Oh my God, I already gave two. Well, a big one for me, it's already on there and I'm sure it was already spoken to while I was off camera, but integrity. That's a really big one for me.
Great. Terry, go ahead. Oh, I lost you, Terry.
You're on
still
mute,
there?
Terry.
So when you added those other ones, I put down perseverance and resiliency. For me, if I didn't have those two, I would have committed suicide a long time ago. And I mean, they're literally, I mean, trying to figure things out and moving forward, knowing that at any point I could take my own life and just end it and call it that, when I was at my lowest and my world was my darkest. But for whatever reason, I was able to find resiliency for myself, persevere through it, look for help, and actually be able to share with individuals where I was at when I was there. And even still to this day, regardless of what life throws my way, I mean, my career ended awfully. It should have never ended the way it did. Moving forward, never, not having any background in private sector, never worked in private sector at all, trying to figure things out and still being of service in connecting, and like people were putting in for the power of our story, that connection, being with like-minded individuals, people that you feel safe with, a sense of community, in feeling really a part of. It's just different values and things that have personally kept me going, even at my worst. So, and I really think sitting with our values in learning who we are is part of that journey of what life is all about and who we choose to associate with.
I love that. As you were talking, I added the word grit because I think that kind of encompasses what you're talking about. But I also think that other words come to mind, like authentic and courage, and then compassion, because without those experiences, you wouldn't be the compassionate person that you are as you help others. So it's interesting, again, the correlations. I think I'm going to experiment with this in a different format, but I think that a fun thing to do would be to draw lines after this exercise from one thing to another and show how many connections there are between them. Okay, so now the challenge that we all have is, I think I count 1, 2, 3, 4, unless I'm overlooking something on the power of our story that aren't filled in. And if we don't fill them in the next couple of minutes, I'm going to add 4 more. But they have to be authentic, meaningful, relevant words. So put a few more for the power of our story. Ah, that's a good one, Denise. Growth.
I think healing, I think trauma is hard, but I think healing's harder. Just my opinion.
Yeah, I often tell police officers and firefighters, I say, hey, you run into a burning building or you confront a homicide suspect in an alley, and yet you're afraid to go see a counselor. And I saw you guys are pretty sneaky. Somebody crossed out one of the squares.
I think that was me on accident.
Oh, it's all right.
It
Um,
might have been me. I thought one was empty but it wasn't. And then I saw some on the side and moved them over. So I don't know what's going on there. Sorry.
Oh, no. Sometimes this thing does a weird thing. Okay, so
I got another one.
Go ahead.
And this can go on both sides. I'd say humility, being humble, and
Huge.
that's something in like this whole group is we're all humble, and no one's story is greater than the others, right? Like we all go through our own trauma, our own story, our own life experience, so that almost like that lack of comparative suffering, and for those that don't know what comparative suffering is, that's when you're like, oh, like their story is worse than mine, and therefore you're not healing. So that humility, that being humble. I'd also say kindness. There's a lot of kindness within this group. If that's on there, I apologize. All I see is a bunch of pink, whatever color boxes. So those are 2 I've got to add to the power of our story.
I would also add to that there's a place where kindness doesn't apply, right? Like if somebody in our group, and I'm going to add my version of that. There's a place where if a person in our group, for example, we knew was really falling down and regressing into those destructive behaviors, at a certain point, we may say, hey, Mike, you're screwing up. Get your act together, right? And it's no longer kind. It might be more of that, I don't know what the word would be, forceful, but it's still that loving basis for it. And at the core of it is kindness, but maybe the presentation isn't that way, right?
I was about to say that would still be kindness. It might not, the person receiving that might not view it as kindness, but it's coming out of that place of, look, like, I love you, dude. I'm here to support you. but obviously being gentle isn't working. So now I've got to be a little bit more forceful, but I'm still being kind. Because I want to see you succeed. So I'm going to do whatever I have to do to help get you through whatever it is.
Hey,
And-
Michael, can I do an example of this? I'm sorry, guys. I don't know what's going on with my video. I think it's tech gremlins, but this is a kindness that saved my life. All right. So I was getting a turkey at a vet center, and there was a Marine there, and he come up to me, he goes, you know what, you look like shit. You need to sit down. You need to fill out this disability paperwork, and you're not leaving here until we do it. If he didn't do that to me, I wouldn't be alive today.
Oh, I'm right there with you. And Terry put in the comments, tough love. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. And as a Marine, I know sometimes that is what I need. I need somebody to be like, hey, motherfucker, get your head out your ass, And I'm like, oh, and honestly, that's probably like saved my life on a few occasions too.
Yeah,
Like,
well, I felt like I was walking around and being invisible, and someone finally saw me.
I think that's called breaking the state, in NLP, we got to break that state. People can keep going, but it's like a shock treatment and or a distraction that brings them back to themselves. And it is tough love, but I also think it's being authentic and being real with you and caring. I think when somebody can say what they did to you, Denise, they really cared about you.
And I got something that might come across a little controversial. Sometimes letting somebody fall flat on their face is kindness. Because some people, and I'm one of those, has to learn the really hard way. You got to fall on your face to be like, oh, like I need to fix that. And I have fallen on my face plenty of times. And I have people that have just let me because they know. They're like, I've done everything I can. You're going to have to learn this the hard way. But guess what? When I got back up, they were right there to help. So I would say that in a way that is kindness. Now, if you're just turning a blind eye because you don't want to deal with it, that's not. But if you're like you can tell, right? Like when you have to watch somebody fall flat on their face and it hurts you, then you're doing it out of like a place of kindness. You're like, damn, I don't want to see them go through this, but sometimes you got to.
Yeah. Now, I would say that kindness, I definitely hold in high regard, and I try to keep it at the core of my being with everything I do. And you're right that I have, especially as a police officer, but as a father and all those things, I have a lot of circumstances where what I'm doing doesn't seem to be kind. However, that's one of the values that I would discard if I had to juxtapose that with, for example, courage or something like that, because it would rank lower on my list. And I often say, as I'm helping people with their recovery, I'll say, you may not be my friend after this, or you may even lose respect for me. So that's another one that I may discard, because being respected isn't as important to me, but it is important to me to show respect if the person warrants that. Sometimes they don't. And so in my echelon, those two are ones that I might discard, because if a person ends up not liking me, but I'm able to help them with their recovery or recuperation or whatever it is, rehabilitation, then I'm okay with that. And I'll take that on if that's the role I need to play in that. So, but then you could argue that that is kindness in and of itself. And so we constantly have this leveling of values. And that actually leads really well to the next part of the discussion. And the discussion isn't over if you have more to say. So interrupt me if you do. Everybody's calling you out, Jim. So I'm going to have you in the next section step up. All right. Now with our paper, if you haven't done this already, or if you're doing a computer screen or something, what we're going to do is we're going to have two sections. In a notebook, it might be left and right pages like we see on the screen here. And you're going to have, that's the easiest way to do it, to separate it. And I want you on both sides of the paper, one for the group, the power of our story, and one for you as an individual, list at least 10 core values. that are important to you. And what I see when I get to watch people write, it's really interesting because I see them think for a few minutes and then cross something out and add it. And it doesn't have to be a word or phrase that we listed here. It could be something that you think of because of our discussion, something you didn't think to list, something that comes to mind, etc. And list those on the left and the right. Things that are at the core for you. And then I get to make you mad at me in just a couple of minutes with the next step. Now,
You said 10 things?
yeah, at least 10. Some people, when I give this exercise, will come up with 20, and some people have a hard time coming up with 5. The goal is to list 10 values, and this for you is a very thoughtful process. Now, for those people who are watching after the fact, I don't want to just keep talking to fill space, but as they're writing, because you didn't have a chance to participate in the discussion, I want you to really put some thought into this. What if people speak, and again, if people speak of me or about me after I pass away, what are the words that I want to resonate in that conversation? I definitely don't want people to say he was greedy or self-driven or self-motivated. Self-motivated, I don't know, maybe we could articulate that that's a good one. I don't want people to say that for me, he used to step on other people to get to where he needed to be. I want them instead to say he helped other people up when they were being stepped on. So those are the types of things, but I want to put those into fairly concise words or maybe phrases that I can draw from. And then if you have done the 10, if you'd like to put your hand up on the video, and that doesn't mean necessarily I'm going to call on you, because this is a process. So I just want to know how we're doing with that, and with no pressure, I want to know where you're at. If you come up with a really good word we didn't list, you can always add it because somebody else might be thinking about that word. And I'll give you a minute to do that.
Patrick, if you want, I can pause this. Do you want me to pause right now, or do you want to keep talking? Totally up
You
to
can pause. Yeah, for those people watching, we're going to pause the video at this point. So you can hit pause as well while you come up with your list. So if you're watching this on video, a moment ago, we paused the action so that people could work on their list. And hopefully you did that and you took as much time as you need to come up with your list. Now we move to the second phase. And if you have your hands up here, you could lower them again. And then if you have a question or a comment, go ahead and raise it again so I know. And what the next phase is I get to laugh deviantly and because the next part, I want you to cross out with one line, don't scribble it out, cross out 3 items from your list.
No. Mm-mm.
This is hard, and this gets harder. Because we're coming down to the very top 3 that embody your belief system. Now, 5 years from now, 2 years from now, that may be different. But right now in 2023, this is where you as an individual are at.
Patrick, can you explain that again real quick?
Yeah, no problem. At this point, we should have 2 lists of 10, one for the group, one for the individual, you as an individual. And with your group of 10, with a clear line, a single line, so you can still read it, you're going to cross out 3 of those values. And we're going to narrow this down to your top core values. And then, to make you angry again, cross out 2 more. Now, if you are ambitious as a person and you listed more than 10, the goal is you should be at this point down to 5 core values that define who you are as an individual and as a group with the power of our story. And I'm not going to let you off the hook because you're going to cross out 2 more. And when everybody's done, you're going to have 3 remaining that are at the core of your being. Now, like we discussed a couple of times with different words that were mentioned, these words may have many others that you listed that are a part of that. For example, being authentic or vulnerable requires courage. It requires humility. And I guess I should say too, that crossing it out doesn't mean it's not one of your core values. It means for this, that we're defining what our top three are, the very top three. And these are hard red lines for us, things where we say, no matter what happens in my life, this is not something I'm going to waver on. Interestingly, the last time I did this, people resorted to resolutes because of the way I defined it. And one person said, I will always keep God as my top priority, as an example. And I said, always? What about if you're hungry and haven't eaten for a few days, would food then be your top priority? Would it shift? And what about times where you're in the dark pit and you can't see out of that? Can you guarantee that that would be, so is always an adequate term? And so that's what we're going to do next, just to put it in context, is we're going to kind of think about how this looks for us as we define these values.
So I have a question on that.
Yeah.
Because what you just did is you went right to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So obviously, if your basic needs aren't being met, your values are going to shift for survival purposes.
Values may shift. You're absolutely right. But sometimes values won't shift, right? Like, let's say that one of your values is a very easy one is I will never steal. That's at the core of my being. I've had things stolen from me. And we could play a game pretty easily where I give one example after another to test when stealing might be okay to a person. And to jump ahead would be really easy. What if you're trying to feed your baby and there's available food? Or what about a person who steals, for example, secrets from another country for the security of their own country? Or I have a friend who smuggles Bibles into Romania, and he's stopped at checkpoints on a regular basis. He smuggles Bibles, food, and items to help people in need. So he often has to lie to get through checkpoints. Does that mean that he has violated his core values? I don't think it does. It requires definition. And all I'm doing, Terry, because you make a very good point, is trying to challenge some of your thoughts where maybe you feel like you're absolutely solid in a position, but the hierarchy of needs might disrupt that.
Correct.
Okay, so I think most people are down to top three. Is there anybody who has not accomplished that or who's struggling with that?
Sorry, I thought you said top two, so I.
Oh, you get to get one back. That's a good thing. Okay.
We were doing the top three of both individual and group, or just individual?
Top three of both, yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm behind the game.
No worries. While she works on that, is there anybody who would like to share? You don't have to, because this is a very personal thing. Michael was quick. Go ahead.
I'll share. I'll be the one. Yeah, I think like my personal core values, they boil down, like a lot of them can fall under other ones. And so I put it at honor, valor, and integrity as my personal ones. I think that encompassed all the rest of the other, I had 11 total, but I think those can all fall under honor, integrity, and valor. Honor is being true to who you are. Valor is drawing that line in the sand and saying, this is who I am. I'm gonna stick true to that, regardless of what comes against you. And then integrity, again, being true to who you are. So when you're those, everything else will fall underneath those three. That's just how I process to those. And then for power of our story, I said honor, love, and integrity.
I love it. I think with our discussion that we just had with Terry, I have a hard time challenging that, because if honor is your driving force, there might be circumstances where the greater good, for example, might be stealing food to support a hungry child or something like that, as an example, a loose example. And you can do that with honor and integrity if your intentions are driven by the right thing, right? So I have a hard time
Right.
challenging those. Love is a great value that doesn't often come up, and you see it's not listed that I see on these lists. So thank you. Michelle, you have your hand up. Oh, sorry, Michael. Did you have something to say?
I was gonna say, actually, love is like, for my business, and you can go to my website. It's one of the ones on there is love. I know it's one you don't really see come up, but love is definitely, in my opinion, an important one that's often overlooked.
If it's at the core of our definition, it's interesting to see how many of these words or phrases change in that context. Michelle, go
It's
ahead.
showing up in individual values. It's loving right there.
Oh, yes. Thank you. And it's circled. I didn't see it. Thank you, Janet. Michelle, go ahead.
So I thought this was an interesting process because I've done this before with my individual values, and I've realized that my top ones are not anywhere the same of what they were. I think the last time I did it, it was like over 5 years ago, and I was in a very different place in my life. So I thought this was really interesting, and my process in my mind, my thoughts that I had really was interesting to me. But my individual top 3 ended up being authentic, perseverance, and curiosity. And I think those just represent a lot of what my main goals are in life right now, of my healing journey, because I'm still in the middle of that healing journey. So I think they're a very close reflection of that. My top 3 that I came up with for the group values was collaboration, authentic, and connection.
I love it. I love it. I usually feel like I'm pretty good at playing the opposition and challenging them. But you guys are making this hard for me. So I guess you flipped the script. Thank you, Michelle. Sarah, you're next up on my screen. Go ahead.
So I found this very interesting too, and something that I actually want to take more time to really think about. For the individual, I put faith, I put courage to stand alone, and love. I feel like the other traits that are important to me are covered by love and faith and courage to stand alone. And then for the group, it really changed. I felt safety, because I do feel that protection for people who are needing that safety to heal. So to me, I feel like that's very important. And then the trust is built and people feel safe, I think, when there's authenticity and people being genuine. So it's safety, authentic, genuine for the group.
It's funny, all those words are on my list of overused words. But authentic and genuine are on my list because they're overused in the wrong context. And this is the context intended. I mean, how can a person truly be authentic unless it's grounded in love? I think you could, maybe somebody could argue that, but I can't. And so just don't add organic and we're okay.
Oh man. Okay. Thanks for the warning. Because I could have.
No, I organic would work in this context too, wouldn't it? If it comes from within and naturally occurs within the group, I think it could, but that's on my list. So I'm looking at it as we talk. It's on there twice for some reason. Janet, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm like Michelle, I'm totally in a different place from where I have been, just even in the last little while. And for myself, I put supportive, honest, and growth. And it's interesting because in the last week, I've been very supportive of 3 spouses whose significant others going through traumatic PTSD, and they're finding themselves isolated. And so those 3 things are something that I'm working on in just being for them, not, the growth part is just encouragement and stuff. So I find that very interesting today. As far as the group, I put courage, compassion, and trust. because it takes courage to be there. You know, we're all compassionate and we trust, we feel comfortable and safe there. And I really think those are the values that I see there.
I think that's beautiful. When I go through this, I do this fairly regularly, teaching leadership and resilience classes. And these discussions often make me reassess where I stand too, and say, am I really rooted in the 3 that I picked previously? And I think that's good. Now, everybody doesn't have to speak on this portion, but is there anybody who didn't get a chance to speak and would like to? Okay, so I'm going to give you a little bit, because Michelle doesn't like it when I ambush you with questions, a little bit of a heads up, because at this point, we've reached the conclusion of the first and second section of 4. And I see your hand, Lisa. I'll come back to you. So the first and second section, we're listing different values for us and the group. That's part 1. And the second section is defining those values, how they apply to ourselves, coming up with the top core principles. As after I let Lisa comment, well, the next section that we're going to follow up with after this, and I'll give you a heads up on that, is we're going to use those values to come up with an individual mission statement, only individual at this point. And we're not going to do that today, because I think that giving you some time to contemplate and work on that would be an advantage. So Lisa, if you'd like to say something, and then I'll explain the next steps in the process.
So I was just going to say mine for individual is kindness, boundaries, and safety. And for group, it is camaraderie, safety, and support/encouragement.
I love it. Okay, is there anybody else who'd like to comment on this part of the exercise? Okay, so I'm going to give you a heads up about what we're going to do in the future. And I already mentioned it, is part of what we're going to do is take these values and write an individual mission statement. And for those people that are joining us on video, I'd like to thank you profusely for joining us. However, what you're missing out on is what we talk about before and after this, because those discussions often are the most poignant and remarkable for me, the ones that really impact me. And that's where we're going to go in just a minute. But please don't hesitate to join us. This is a group where we're building a tribe of people, and it's based in those words that we said. It's based in authentic and genuine love and support. And it's a place where we safely allow people to be vulnerable. See how I incorporated the words? But it was so natural because it's a part of what we do. So I look forward to seeing you on the Power of Our Story. Connect with Sarah if you'd like to join us, because it's not open to everyone. You have to receive a link to join us. And if you have comments, put them below and we'll try to respond to those. Until the next time we join, we're going to stop the recording. And I wish you all love, respect, kindness, and authenticity in the week ahead of you.